Blog Talk Radio.
Down to sleep, lay me down. I pray my soul is mine to keep. My soul can never step outside this bed, never into all the evil. Now back from the dead.
Are you scared?
He's here.
The calling hours.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Calling Hours Horror Podcast on Horror Society Radio. It is I, the Head Undertaker, the Dead Man Michael Jones of HorrorSociety.com and Living Dead Magazine. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? For our 54th episode, we are going to have writer, director, and actress mic kick. Writer, director, and actress I can't believe I can't pronounce her name right. Genoveva Rossi. I'm sorry about that. I'm a little tongue-tied right now. But we will have writer, director, and actress Genoveva Rossi on. And those of you that may not remember, it was in August of 2013, I highlighted her in my Deadly Beauty, Horrors, Scream Queens, and Rising Talent on HorrorSociety.com. And even then, she had done an incredible wealth of genre films, and I definitely wanted to have her on. So you guys should know her from some of the titles. I Spill Your Guts, which was from 2012. Also, Jacko Slasher from the same year. Sheriff Tom versus the Zombies in 2013, and Apocalypse Kiss, which was filmed this year, 2014, since we're almost going into the new year. So we have a lot to talk to her about. She does a couple of other things as well. She's quite the interesting person. She's also a model. She does some tarot reading, palm and runes. So we'll talk about that stuff. We'll talk about her film work, what she's working on right now, what's getting ready to go on. I know she just signed on or is doing something with Diabolique magazine, Diabolic magazine, however you want to say it. I haven't had a chance to really look that over. I only saw that on my timeline today. So we are going to have her on and have a ball with that. We're also going to be reviewing Scream Factory's 2-disc set of Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. It's a nice little 2-disc combination. And we're going to be featuring several bands in our Metal Blade Spotlight. As a matter of fact, we're going to go into our first double shot right now. We're going to open it up with Whitechapel. The CD is Our Endless War. The song is Let Me Burn. That's Cannibal Corpse. Off their CD, A Skeletal Domain. The song was The Murderer's Pact. We opened up that set with Whitechapel from their CD, Our Endless War. The song, Let Me Burn. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to have our interview with writer, director, and actress Genoveva Rossi. But before that, it's time for our first digital dismemberment for the evening. And tonight is special. We are going to do both discs of a Scream Factory release. So let's dig into it.
Digital dismemberment.
And on this digital dismemberment, the first spotlight, the last of the year, we are going to be covering Scream Factory's 2-disc release of Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. From the press release, 2 classic British horror films make their Blu-ray debut on December 2nd, 2014 from Scream Factory. Scream Factory invites you to embrace the chills this December with 2 classic British horror films. On December 2nd, Scream Factory will release Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror on Blu-ray for the first time. Featuring the rare uncut version of Vault of Horror, the 2-disc set includes 3 different cuts of the cult classic. The first disc will include Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror's uncut widescreen presentation. The second disc will include Vault of Horror's theatrical PG cut and a rare open matte version of the BFI Master. The release also includes an original trailer and an alternate opening scene for Vault of Horror. But right now, we're going to focus on Tales from the Crypt. When 5 unwary travelers with dark hearts stumble into a series of catacombs, they find themselves in a cavern with no way out. But the horror's only just begun as a mysterious figure appears to reveal each person the shocking events that will lead to their well-deserved, untimely, and unavoidable demise. An all-star cast with Joan Collins, if you want to take it to genre routes, Empire of the Ants, Peter Cushing, Horror of Dracula, Patrick McGee, A Clockwork Orange, Sir Ralph Richardson from Rollerball, and directed by Freddie Francis, who did The Creeping Flesh. Tales from the Crypt is the original, gets right under your skin creep fest. You know, and this was really entertaining to watch. You know, we're talking late 70s. Let me make sure I have my date right on that, because, you know, it really is. I really don't have the year here. Okay, well, you know, it's kind of like that anthology style without it breaking it up too much. You know, you have the 5 travelers, and each one of them is a short story in their life, and it's basically the event that led to their death. Only they don't realize at the time, you know, what's going on. They're given this vision from this hooded man, and you know, it seems a little odd that they all stopped at this kind of like crypt. It's a tour of catacombs, and they get separated from their group, and it's kind of, you know, the crypt keeper, and he shows them a vision of the circumstance of their death. And you know, one of the ones that'll really always stand out to me is Joan Collins. You know, if you remember the first HBO episode of Tales from the Crypt, it's a retelling of that story of the lunatic that escapes. You know, the woman has just killed her husband for the insurance, and then the little girl lets him in, and he winds up killing her. You know, just absolutely classic. Peter Cushing, you know, was absolutely amazing. You know, anything that you can watch Peter Cushing in, it's definitely worth sitting there and watching. You know, very striking visually for its times. Like, again, you got to think very late 60s, early 70s. You know, very brightly colored. You know, the fashion will certainly catch your eye because, you know, it was filmed during that time. It's not like watching a film now that's trying to recreate that genre, that era. So it was really nice from a visual standpoint. The film is very nice looking, very pristine. I think the sound is tremendous quality. The technical specs for the disc, the aspect ratio is 1.78.1. It's got a PG rating. But again, it's something that you look back to, and it had its fair amount of blood and gore in it. The Vincent Price episode was pretty nice. Joan Collins as well. It's funny looking back now at the blood, especially as an effects artist. I see that whole, that red paint. You would associate it with a lot of the Italian genre films, but again, a very enjoyable experience. It's the kind of where you could sit down and watch with your family. It's nothing absolutely gratuitous. And, like I said, Joan Collins, you don't see an actress like Joan Collins in the same film, nonetheless, with Peter Cushing. So, there's a little bit of history there. There's no trailer for it or any special features. A little interesting. I think it would have been interesting to see a little small piece, a biography piece on it, maybe an interview or two. But overall, a very solid and outstanding effort, and definitely worth checking out. I'll give a total rating at the second DVD review when we cover Vault of Horror. But Tales from the Crypt, just from a sheer enjoyable standpoint, I would give the film a solid 3.5 out of 5. It's enjoyable. Like I said, it brings it to you without being overly gratuitous. It shows that good horror can be made without a lot of cussing or nudity or anything like that, when suspense is built right, when you have the right character actors. So, again, about a 3.5 out of 5. So check this one out. I'll give all the details on it when we cover Vault of Horror in the second part. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we're going to have our interview with actress Genoveva Rossi. And before that, we're going to get into our second Metal Blade music mix. We're going to open this one up with Cattle Decapitation off of the CD Monolith of Inhumanity. The song is Gristle Liquor.
Attracting blood, yet not a face that loveth.
That was Facebreaker off of the CD dedicated to the Flesh. The song was Zombie Flesh Cult. Before that, we opened it up with some Cattle Decapitation. Monolith of Inhumanity was the CD. The song was Gristle Liquor. Coming up here in a moment, we will be joined by writer, director, and actress Genoveva Rossi. And again, I had interviewed her about a year and a half ago for my Deadly Beauty series on Horror Society. And I thought, I asked the questions that I ask of everyone who's a part of that interview series, how did you get into the industry? What Scream Queen inspired you? What projects do you want to tell us about now? And I've always kind of found Genoveva's origins, how she got into the whole thing, interesting. And I believe she's joining us now. Genoveva, are you here?
I am. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm glad after all this time we finally managed to sync up a time when I could have you on the podcast.
Exactly right.
I was telling the listeners right before you came on, way back about a year and a half ago, when I first started the Deadly Beauty series on Horror Society, you were one of the first that I put on that series. And, it got a great response, got a lot of views. People really seemed to like it. And, you've been doing so much film, I just felt like it was time. Kind of tell everyone how you're doing. First of all, what's kind of going on? What's hot in your world right now?
Sure. First, I want to thank you for having me on Deadly Beauties in the beginning there, and it was definitely an exciting point, nice little point in my career. And yeah, I've been keeping myself pretty occupied. Believe it or not, I'm calling you right now from Canada, where I have been working. And life has been, I would say, pretty consistently busy in the horror genre, and I've been acting in other genres as well. So always like to keep myself busy. That's what I'm all about.
Well, and trust me, over the hour, we're definitely going to be hitting on as many of your films as we can. But I was telling people one of the things that really intrigued me when I first interviewed you for the Deadly Beauty series was I had asked you, how did you get into the industry? And you had said that you had always been a huge fan of horror, and you had been going to horror conventions since you were a child. Kind of tell us about what led to you going to, the horror conventions. Were you going with mom and dad? Was it another family member? What really drew you into it once you went to one?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to say, and I'm going to attribute this to my father, I think a lot, my interest in horror. Is that when I was a little girl, my father introduced me to the Universal Studio Monsters because he was always a really big fan of old-style horror movies. And then he got me into the Hammer movies with Barbara Steele and Vincent Price and Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and all that kind of fun stuff. And then when I was a little girl, we went to the Chiller Theater Horror Convention together once. And then, unfortunately, my father tragically died when I was young. But I've always been very, very interested in horror as a result, and I always continued to go to Chiller, all these other horror conventions, and I've had this, long-lasting, obsession with horror. Even, when I was a little girl, I'd be walking around with my Sangora magazine. I would always be reading, Stephen King and Frankenstein and Dracula novels and Anne Rice stuff, as far back as probably, fourth grade. I was always a big horror fan, on every level. I was a total geekazoid when it came to things like that. Wearing my little Dark Shadows T-shirts and, and interested in all this stuff that really most of my peers were not interested in, especially, my female peers. There were certainly some guys that were into horror, but I would think I was one of the only girls that I knew that was really, really into the horror as a genre as much as I was. And it was horror literature, it was horror movie, it was everything. It was the old stuff, it was the new stuff. I remember being a little kid and going to Chiller Theater and meeting Michael Berryman and Linnea Quigley, and just being kind of awestruck with them. And then it's just as life would turn out, I've worked with both of them on films. It's kind of funny how life kind of goes full circle. So
I mean, definitely. And for a second, can you kind of expand on that? I never had the chance, just where I lived and things like that, to ever really, attend anything. But I know from pictures and accounts from other people, the whole convention thing has changed from the early days. Can you kind of talk about how the convention landscape has changed from when you went as a child to what it is now?
Well, that's a good question, and of course, I had a different perception as a child than I do now.
Sure.
Interestingly enough, I see a lot of the same faces as guests as I did when I was a kid, because some people are just staples, like Michael Berryman, Linnea Quigley, and so many other people, like that, have been around for such a long time and are always going to be, classics in the genre. And I guess something that's really evolved is like conventions like Chiller have just grown and grown in popularity and gotten bigger and have taken on more and more mainstream guests as time has gone on. And as luck would have it, I've also been a guest at the Chiller Theater Horror Convention too, which was my first horror convention. And then I've been, to Sangora Convention years ago, and I've been to Monster Mania, and I've been to all these other things over the years, and so many conventions, and it seems like a lot of them are growing, and it seems like so many more conventions are popping up all the time. Like I just did a few months ago, I did Blood and Babes, which was a new convention. I did Mr. Hush, Weekend of Fear, the second convention of that kind. I did the the Connecticut Horror Fest, and a whole bunch of conventions like that. And there always seem to be new ones popping up now, because it seems like horror, Walking Dead and all these other wonderful TV series and films out there is becoming a really evolving and exciting genre once again, I'm seeing more young people, I think, at conventions now than I even used to back in the day, And a lot of little girls. I think a lot of little girls, because of maybe Twilight and because of Walking Dead, have really gotten interested in the genre, Because you might not enjoy Twilight movies. Like, I think they're cute, and I've seen them. But I think if you're a little girl watching them, you're like, oh, these are vampires. What other vampire movies are there? And then you start watching all the other movies, so at least it gets kids interested, in the genre. And then they realize, there's much cooler movies out there to watch too.
No, I get that. I have a 13-year-old daughter, Ariana, and I do effects work. And on the first film I did, she came on set, and we did her up as a zombie, and she saw how it was all done. She was like 4 at the time, but it was funny. With my movie collection, like, she knew who Jason was, who Freddy was, who Leatherface was, and she was kind of growing up into it. So, I get that. Now, I think the part that's interesting, though, is, of course, you started as a fan and you were going to these conventions. Well, now you're a draw. You're a main event. You're somebody. You are a scream queen. How would you, even though you were younger, how would you compare the experience, being on the other side now?
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing because I think it makes me appreciate it more. And I probably have more fun at the horror conventions than a lot of the other guests that probably aren't fans, because I am walking around and I am buying stuff and I am checking out the other guests. So I can definitely keep myself pretty amused for 3 days,
Sure,
I
understand.
Have 20 boring moments. Yeah. If you're not a fan of the genre, it's a little bit different. And I think it helps me a lot as an actress is that I understand the genre, and I've seen so many of these movies that I fully understand, I think, my character, my place in the horror genre, what the films are trying to accomplish, their place, in the genre, whether it's a horror comedy or a grindhouse film or a suspenseful horror film or psychological. Like, I definitely understand the genre thoroughly, probably more than I do any other genre. And not everybody probably has that kind of that knowledge. And I think that's really influenced me and helped me a lot as an actress in promoting myself, and my acting and networking and everything else, is that I have a full knowledge of what the genre that I'm acting in, probably more than a lot of people out there. Like, this is the thing I'm geeky for. Like, some people are really into Star Trek, aren't really into horror, and I actually act in that genre. So, yeah, I bring that knowledge with me in everything I do, So.
I mean, I think that's pretty cool that you've gotten to experience it from both sides of the fence.
Well, and I have an interesting story I'm going to bring in, too, is that years ago I was at the Chiller Theater Horror Convention, and there was a woman friend of mine who is a well-known psychic reader, and she had said to me at one of the conventions, and this is many years ago, and I was quite young at the time, and she had said to me, oh, you know, I can really see you becoming an actress working in horror movies. I could really see you being very successful with that. And I didn't really think too much of it at the time, and it took many years from when she said that, for me to really find my way into horror movies. But I always remember her saying that, and she was someone that is a well-known psychic and goes around doing a lot of psychic readings and things like that. And I'm also a professional tarot card reader, and that's one of the reasons why we were good friends. And she had mentioned that one time when we were at Chiller, and then I had kind of just stored that away. And then years later, I thought back to what she said, and I was like, gee, I guess in a sense what she said came true, but just quite a while later. You know. So.
No, I get it, and like I said, I just think it's really cool that you have gotten to see, you know, both sides of the fence. You know, a lot of us, you know, I've done a little bit of work. I'm certainly not done the body of work that you have, but you know, even as a fan, I've never been to one of these, and you know, that's one of the goals for the year is to do that. So,
well, I think there's more and more conventions popping up, so hopefully we'll get some out in your area, because otherwise it's like you have to take a big, long vacation, and your horror convention is like your vacation for you, because some of them, you know, are hard to get to.
Oh, no, and there's one in Charlotte. I mean, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. There's one in Charlotte that I should be able to get to this year. It's, you know, it's just really interesting, and I think you'll like it if you come to that one in North Carolina. There's a lot of independent stuff that goes on here. It's not just UNC Wilmington and the De Laurentiis Studios. There's a lot of indie work that goes on in North Carolina. I think it's something you should check into. I mean, if you've never come out here and work, it's a nice place to work. So.
Oh, well, definitely send me some contacts for the convention. I'll take a look into it and see if it fits into my schedule, because that's what it's all about. You know, I like to do conventions. I'm starting to book myself for my conventions for 2015 now. So if anybody's listening and has a convention, let me know if you want me to come out. You know, based on my availability, I'm going to do as many of them as I can. My shoots always kind of come first, but then if I have some weekends free, I definitely love going out and doing the conventions and meeting the fans, you know.
Well, let me throw this one out to you. You know, I also write for Living Dead magazine, and I believe it's November 13th, 14th, and 15th in Portland. I believe in Portland. I'll have to send you the links on everything. I don't have it right here in front of me. But we're doing a paranormal and horror con. So what I'll do is
for me, because I'm a tarot card reader and I'm also a scream queen, so I can always do seminars or things on both, you know. So
I'll set you up with Deanna Utella, who's my boss over at Living Dead, and we'll see what we can do there. So, I mean, that worked out pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be perfect, because I do really well at conventions that have the paranormal horror aspect, because I definitely delve into both areas, and it's kind of interesting how they overlap so much with my acting. Like, I'm an experienced tarot card and psychic reader, and how often have I played a psychic reader, a gypsy, a sorceress, and a witch in a film? Like, a lot.
Right.
You know? So that's kind of fun, and I would love to embrace both of those things in one convention, too. That'd be a lot of fun. So definitely message me the info when you can, and we'll look into this. Definitely. Definitely.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you have been working on the In Fear of series, and you've actually been in several episodes.
4 to be exact.
You know, what's that?
4 to be exact.
Yeah. Glossophobia, agoraphobia, scoto, I always say that one wrong, scotomathophobia, and I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we know which episodes I'm talking about by now, but you know, kind of tell us about how you got.
I speak of them in the layman's term. Fear of Public Speaking was one, and that was directed by Deborah Rashan, and I played a zombie in that one. And it was nice to work with Deborah Rashan. That's one of the reasons why I came out for that one. I was in Fear of Touch, which was the first one I did. I had a small part in, but the ones you probably get the best performances out of me, and you really get to see me really showcase my ability, is going to be Fear of Blindness, directed by Jeremiah Kipp, which I'm prominently featured in. I get to read tarot cards in that, actually, too, and I had a lot of fun working with that one with my good friend Susan Adrianson, and also Jeremiah Kipp, the director, and that was produced by Scott Perry. And then another one was Fear of Sexual Assault, directed by Bradley Cranzo and starring the both of us. I had a blonde wig in that one, and takes place in the 1980s. So those two are the ones that you're going to really see me the most, Fear of Blindness and Fear of Sexual Assault. But I had a lot of fun working on the series. Scott Perry really had an amazing idea with the whole Inferior web series. I actually wrote about it in this December issue of Malevolent Magazine that I write for every month. So if anybody wants to check that out, I have 6 pages of photos and pictures and everything, and a write-up on the 4 episodes that I was in. And I had a lot of fun. It's a great. If you're not aware of the series, every episode focuses on a clinical fear or phobia. And each episode is directed by a different director and showcases different actors. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've had Scott on a couple of times, and I think he's a really good guy. And I've got to watch several of the episodes. And I wanted to ask you, kind of tell everyone what it's like working with Scott, because like you said, I think it was a great concept that he came up with this.
Oh yeah, well Scott's a very dynamic and really passionate person. He really works very, very hard at what he does. He came up with this whole concept, and he was the one that really was instrumental in putting everything together. I know Scott had a lot of sleepless nights, and he sweat a lot, and he put a lot of blood and tears into this, the Inferior series, and I think it really, really shows. And every episode is really dynamic and interesting, and it's all really based on his premise, and he also wrote and directed some of them himself. So he put on so much work on so many different levels. Like, Scott is a great guy. I consider him to be a friend. I enjoyed working with him tremendously on the episodes that I was involved in, and I look forward to hopefully working with him in the future. He's a really nice guy. Great to work
definitely.
with.
Like I said, I mean, it was. I've done some stuff, written some stuff about him on Horror Society, and had him on the podcast. He's really a dynamic guy. I highly encourage people as well to check the series out if they have not yet.
Yeah, it's currently on Vimeo, so you can sit down and for a couple bucks, you can watch each episode and really check it out.
And I mean, it is worth it. A lot of times, people, you're shilling. No, this guy's stuff is actually pretty good. The quality of actors and actresses. I mean, Ann Bobby was in one of the episodes, and I had her on it, and we touched on the series very briefly for a moment. So it's got a lot of people involved all the way around the genre. So it's definitely, people should check that out.
Well, look for me. 4 episodes. Look for Susie Lorraine. Look for Deborah Rashan. Look for Manouche.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of really great people in the horror genre are involved in the series. Absolutely.
Oh yes, it's like I said, it's fantastic to see. I would love to see Scott do a feature-length movie at some point, along these lines, and see what he does. I think he's someone people should be watching out for sure.
For sure, and I think it's just a matter of time before he does do a feature. I'm sure,
Oh yeah,
just a matter of time.
I can't wait. Now, as we go forward, keep in mind, yes, we're friends on Facebook, and I keep track of your movies on there, but for primary purposes, IMDb. So if a date's wrong or something like that, please make sure to correct it. I want people to get all the right info.
No problem.
You got 54 titles to your credit already. But let's start at number 1. And the first film that's listed on your IMDb is a film from 2012 directed by James Balsamo, entitled I Spill Your Guts.
Yeah.
Kind of tell us about how you got involved in this film. And it really has an absolutely stunning cast. For people who might overlook it, Lloyd Kaufman's in this film, Andrew W.K.'s in this film, Lynn Lowry, Tim Ritter. I mean, a lot of the Trauma people that you would recognize. So kind of tell us about how you fell in with this film.
Well, ironically, it doesn't. Dates don't always come out accordingly on IMDb. But what had really happened is my first horror film was Jacko Slasher, directed by Jen Valdez, and I came out to play a sexy Satanist in a cornfield. And who was my scene partner but James Balsamo? And that's when I met James Balsamo, and we exchanged contact information. And then just a little while later, we worked on I Spill Your Guts. And I Spill Your Guts was my trial by fire, in a sense, because it was my first romantic or sex scene I had ever done in a film. And it's like my second horror film, and things like that. So it was pretty funny. And, so I came out there for 2 days and shot I Spill Your Guts out in Long Island with James Balsamo. And that was the beginning of our relationship. And, it really is a film that a lot of fans love. Like, I go to horror conventions. I put a couple copies out on the table. People are always saying how they've seen the movie, how they love the movie, how they love the original plot. It's a revenge story. They love the acting. They love the story. A lot of my good friends, like Bob Sachi, are in the film. My friend Robert Aronson is in the film. So many people have really engaging, wonderful performances, I think, in it, really. And so many people that I'm really good friends with, too. And it's a great film if you haven't checked it out. I Spill Your Guts. It's a revenge story. And it was the beginning of my relationship with James Balsamo in the sense that we went on from that to do Cool as Hell, to do, something called Gory Tits that hasn't been released yet. To do, Cool as Hell Bite School, Catch of the Day. And then his most recent one that we're working on right now is called Bite School, which I play Suckerella, who is a wannabe vampire with my own cable access show. So my role in I Spill Your Guts is a pretty serious role, I would say. I play like the girlfriend of the main character. But my later roles with James, I think, are a bit more comedic than that one. That's okay. But I Spill Your Guts is probably my favorite James Balsamo film, probably because it's the first one I did with him, and maybe because I had a romantic scene.
I mean, I know sometimes, when you're working on a project, when you're trying to break into the industry, and you're doing anything. And the first time you run into someone that, you recognize or that, you enjoyed watching on film, what was that experience like? Because, like I said, there was a good list of people in that film. I mean, I could only imagine, what it would be like to meet Lloyd Kaufman. I couldn't imagine it. I mean, I think I would be professional, but at the same time, there's that whole fanboy element of, holy shit, there's Lloyd Kaufman.
Well, it's great because I run into Lloyd Kaufman at a lot of conventions, and it does fill me with this kind of glee to know that Lloyd knows exactly who I am and remembers my name when I see him, so that's nice. It kind of gives you a sense of how far you've come as an actor to know that people like that, you're on their radar and they know who you are. Like to have so many actors and actresses that I've known and looked up to over the years be people I've worked with and people I'm friends with on Facebook and people I interact with on conventions is really, really inspiring. It really gives me a sense of how far I've come, that people know who I am. Like I was recently, over the summer I was at the Mr. Hush Weekend of Horror, and I show up on Friday, and there's Kane Hodder. He's like, oh, Genoveva, you're a guest here too, yay! And I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing that here I am at a convention, Kane Hodder knows who I am, and we're signing autographs together. I'm like, wow, and Tom Savini's here, and we're drinking coffee together in the green room, And these are people that I really grew up looking up to,
Right. Oh, he would be one for me, too. I mean, I didn't go to school for effects. I watched his films growing up, and yeah, I mean that would be just absolutely amazing. Huh.
Oh, absolutely, and it is really, really inspiring. And I would say of all the films I've done, the real film that was kind of a turning point for me in a lot of ways professionally, I had a good beginning if you think about it, because my first film, Jacko Slasher, and I went to I Spill Your Guts, and then I went to Zombie Hunters, and all those have distribution. So my first 3 films had distribution, and pretty good distribution too, So I think I picked my projects pretty well in that regard. But one film that was a real turning point for me early on that I did a couple of years ago was Apocalypse Kiss. And that was a film directed by Christian Jude Grillo and stars his wife, Carmela, and also has Michael Berryman, D.C. Douglas, who's known for being the primary voice in Resident Evil, Tom Atkins, that we all know from Lethal Weapon and Halloween, and all these other amazing people that are part of the cast. And I just, I showed up there, and I got cast as this, kind of this pregnant hippie character, working at a cafe, and I'm one of the supporting cast, and I'm one of the, I think, the top 10 billed people in the film. And that was a real turning point for me because I'm like, wow, here I am on set with all these people like Michael Berryman, and this really like high production kind of film. We built sets, we had CGI, we knew 6 months before what our dialogue was, and we were researching our characters. Things, Christian Grillo was really on the ball. And I showed up on set, and there's D.C. Douglas, and he says to me, he's like, Genoveva, he's like, you look so familiar. He's like, have we met? And I was like, I don't think we have, D.C., because I'm like, I'm sure I would have remembered you, because obviously he's a pretty well-known guy. He's been in a lot of things. You check out D.C. Douglas online. He has quite the IMDb. And he was like, wait a minute, Genoveva. He's like, I saw the dailies. He's like, I've seen some of your scenes. He's like, bravo. He's like, you did a great job. And that was really like a turning point for me, that an actor that's so professional and so more advanced than I was at the time would give me such a compliment like that he remembered my performance and that he thought I did a really great job. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's really great feedback for me, that maybe I need to take things further. Maybe I need to go into some different directions and kind of embrace some other things and maybe get a little more ambitious with this, than I have been before. And and for me, I think that film was a real turning point. And also it was like kind of, in a sense, no offense to anybody, but it was really one of the first films I did where I wasn't really cast based on my looks. Because, in a lot of films, I am kind of sexy looking, and I have no problem with playing a sexy character. I think I'm a sexy girl. Why not, right? But for this film, Apocalypse Kiss, I'm like 9 months pregnant, and I'm kind of frumpy looking. So I'm really there just to really act, And I was like, but that was cool because I'm like, all right. I'm like, you want me to be 9 months pregnant and look like kind of like this grungy hippie character that's kind of poor or whatever. But I'm like, I fully embrace that as an actress because, I have no problem playing pretty characters or playing ugly characters or playing a monster or playing anything because that's acting. You don't always get to play the good-looking character. And sometimes playing the unattractive character is the most exciting character in the film.
Right.
Who cares? You want to have versatility. So I really embraced that, too. It was interesting for me to play this role. It was completely different than anything I had done before and in such an accomplished film. And I had a lot of fun with it. It was extremely challenging. I had a lot of really challenging scenes in that, in fact. So that was a turning point for me, I would think. And then since then, I think I've been kind of trying to really push myself in a lot of ways to go in a lot of different directions, So, fun.
Well, on that interesting note, we'll talk about TV for a second. You had two appearances on Gotham, and you have an appearance on Orange Is the New Black. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how it was different working on those projects? Especially something like Gotham.
Well, I like to consider myself to be someone that's versatile as an actor. So, and working on Gotham was great because I think I tend to have a little bit of this gritty kind of look to me. And maybe how I dress and stuff. So I ended up getting cast as a seedy neighborhood person in 2 episodes. So that, because I think I really kind of embraced that. Who knows, maybe they'll have me back on a couple more times because I think I really played that well. And I have a couple scenes, I think one scene where I'm walking down the street and I see Penguin. There's another scene where, there's kind of like a drug deal going on around me and there's, a whole bunch of seedy people going on. And it was a lot of fun. It was interesting being on Gotham to be part of this really, super professional, super high-budget kind of project. And then, I've always been a big fan of the Batman series as well. So from that standpoint, it was a lot of fun, too, because I read the comic books. I've seen all the movies. I even used to watch the 1970s show on repeats, on TV. I love Julie Newmar. I love Adam West even. Bang, zoom, wham,
Yeah,
I like all that kind of
Adam
stuff.
West.
Yeah, you can't have it. Nah. So I'm a big fan of that genre, so it was great for me to come out and do that. And then Orange Is the New Black, I was an inmate eating kind of macaroni and cheese, hanging out in the cafeteria and walking down the halls and things like that, and hanging out in the prison with the other girls. So that was a lot of fun. I was also on Nurse Jackie as a featured wedding guest at an Italian wedding. That was kind of a fun one, too. It's a lot of fun for me to kind of step outside of myself and do things that are a little bit different. I am probably the most well known for my work in the horror genre, but then I do enjoy doing things outside of that. And I think the more you embrace other things and kind of step outside of your comfort zone as an actor, the more you evolve and grow. And that's important, you know.
I agree. I agree with that 100%. I mean, that's, you know, part of what you try to do with every project is try to grow and expand what you know and everything that you can do.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said it, but it was like, sometimes the best role or the best character you ever play is the one you didn't think you were capable of. You know?
Right.
The one that allows you to step the furthest outside of yourself. The one that maybe takes the most research, the most effort, the most thought to really get into the psychology of the character. And if you can really commit yourself to that, you'll grow, you'll evolve, and you'll expand as an actor. And like with Apocalypse Kiss and a lot of other films that I did, I tried to actually kind of submerge myself with actors that were, I would say, better than me. You know, that were more advanced than me, that were, you know, maybe acting for like 22 years, 30 years or whatever. And I think the more you surround yourself with people like that, the more it forces you to step up your game and just become a better actor yourself. You know?
Certainly.
And that's what I'm all about. I want to really embrace my craft, and I want to grow, and I want to embrace, and I want to just evolve and take on new things. Like I've even been getting involved in some comedy stuff recently. I can't really talk about it too much right now, but I was on a potential TV pilot where I did 2 auditions where I had to do improv comedy, and then I was cast in a part for this pilot. And that's kind of exciting that I got to audition, do improv comedy. That's something different for me, you know, to just come up with my comedic dialogue and kind of run with it and be cast by a pretty well-known director in his field. So, and then I did a Christian film a little while ago, which was really exciting. I got to work with, because I'm open to all different genres. It stars Stephen Baldwin, who's a really great actor. Tina Louise from Gilligan's Island, always my favorite character from Gilligan's Island, I'm even going to say, because she was the actress. And also Burt Young, who I always loved as Paulie and Rocky. We're all in this movie called Tapestry, which everyone should be looking for in 2015 if you're interested in Christian films. It's very different than things I've done before. There's really no violence, sex, or nudity. Just good acting and a good kind of wholesome family story. And obviously, you know, there's a market and there's an audience for all different genres, you know, whether it's horror or you know, something like Gotham certainly has an audience. Orange is the New Black has an audience. Horror comedies have an audience. Everything kind of has its own audience, and I don't want to limit myself as an actor to any one particular genre. I like to kind of embrace different things, try different things. So that was kind of a different role for me to be working on a set of a Christian film, but I was like, sure, you know, why not, you know? And it was funny because I met Stephen Baldwin on... what were we going to ask?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I met Stephen Baldwin on set, and he actually like looked me up on Facebook and was like looking at some of my pictures of me in horror movies and stuff. And he was just like, "Wow!" He's like, "Some of the stuff you've done is pretty wacky, pretty crazy." I guess it is, but I like to show that I have the range. Like I can be in the craziest wacky horror movie in the world, but then then I can come out and be in a Christian film, and then maybe one day I'll be doing Shakespeare. You know, I want to show that I have this range and that I could really. I'm a well-rounded actor, you know. Anyway,
what I wanted to bring up was I had a discussion with some friends of mine, you know, that are non-filmmakers, and you know, they were asking me, you know, if you would do, you know, if you were to direct a movie, what would you know, how would you handle dialogue and things like that? And I told them, I said, to me, the best acting is when you're not acting at all. You know, when you have the preparation and you have the knowledge going in, that it's like natural conversation. It flows the right way. It sounds right. It looks right. Mannerisms. You know, for you, when you go into a role, can you talk about, you know, what kind of preparation you have to put in for certain things? You know, whether you're on the set all day covered in blood screaming, or you're running through the woods, or you're the one chasing someone through the woods, or as you said, playing, you know, a role in a religious film. You know, kind of talk about the mental preparation that you put yourself through to get into your characters. Well,
first off, I'm going to say nothing replaces hard work and dedication. You know, nothing does. and you really want to research and be prepared with your character, and you want to memorize your dialogue, but you also have to understand your dialogue and the context of your dialogue, and like what are you really saying? How does it fit into the story? How does it fit into that conversation? Is it natural? Is it flowing? And before you get there, you have to have all this memorized, and you really have to have it memorized. But at the same time, when you get there and the director says, you know what, we're going to throw all this dialogue out the window, we're going to do something completely different, you have to be like, okay, no problem. You know, I've spent hours memorizing my dialogue. Now I'm just going to throw that out the window and roll with something completely different. You know, and that's how you have to be as an actor. You have to be prepared, but at the same time, you also have to be flexible because you never know. Things can change on a whim. You know, you never know what's going to happen. So you want to be prepared. You want to understand your character. You want to go in there knowing what's going on, and things should be natural. You should always bring part of yourself, I think, into the role that you're playing. You know, find that part of yourself that relates to it. Like in Hunters, I'm running around murdering people and covered in blood. So you got to maybe find that deep, dark place within yourself, deep, dark place inside myself that maybe wants to run around covered in blood killing people. And you got to kind of embrace that inner Genoveva. And you got to bring her out in those scenes and make that performance like real and authentic, because good acting shouldn't seem like acting. It should seem like reality.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And that's a double-edged sword, though, too, because I can't tell you how many times I act in films, like I Spill Your Guts or whatever, and then I have women going up to me and telling me what a slut or whatever I am in real life because of the characters that I portrayed in films. Because some people have a really hard time, you know, drawing the line between the character you're playing and who you are in real life.
Right.
And you will get a lot of negative feedback from people when it comes to things like that, you know, that they really have a very hard time drawing that line. Just because you do a romantic scene, just because maybe you played a hooker in a movie, doesn't really mean you're a hooker in real life. I think posted something on my Facebook once about that. I had somebody that was, like, bawling me out because she didn't like the characters I played or something like that, and she thought they were, like, a representation of who I am. And I was like, you know what? You know, when I'm in a movie and I play a vampire or a murderer or a zombie or a soldier or a prostitute, you know, that's not really me. But I started all those things one day.
You got to have goals, you know. You got to have goals.
Yeah, I want to be a zombie-killing vampire prostitute. You know, one day.
You know, yeah,
but,
I mean, baby steps.
I don't know how likely it is, but, you know, maybe one day I'll be all those things. We'll see. But, yeah, but some people have a really hard time drawing the line between what's reality and what's fiction in your performances. And some people don't always have, you know, nice things to say about the roles that you take. But what you have to understand is I've done some films that, you know, have been pro-Christian, have been kind of anti-Christian, have been kind of controversial and disturbing. But in the end, like, and people say to me, how do you take these roles? Why do you take these roles? Because you know what? I'm an actor, and any character I play isn't actually me. And I think God is going to understand that, and my family should understand that, and my friends should understand that I'm acting, and that none of these characters are ever me, and should never really be associated or considered a representation of me, you know?
Right.
And if you think they are, you know, you don't really understand the acting process, you know? Like when D.C. Douglas plays a serial killer in Apocalypse Kiss, no, D.C. Douglas isn't really a serial killer, and I think it's important that we all understand that.
I think it's pretty much common sense, but you know.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how often people really like get like on you as an actor for the roles that you take on. Because I have to think like, you know, why would I want to take this role? Is it going to be challenging? Is it going to be interesting? Is it going to further my career? Those are the kinds of things I ask myself. I don't ask myself, do I agree with this character morally or whatever? I don't need to agree with the character morally. I'm not that character. I'm not actually doing these things. I am merely pretending to do these things.
See, and that's cool, though. That's part of your process and how you come up with your character.
Exactly.
Now,
and even with the sex scenes, people always think, like, you know, we're really having sex or whatever. But when you're really doing a sex scene, unless it's pornography, it's very far removed from actually having sex with anyone. And that's where the acting comes in. Because you pretend as though it is like you are having sex. But you are not actually having sex. And I want everyone to understand that sex.
I've been on set for those days. I understand.
Yeah, because you'd be surprised how often people think that I've done pornography or something like that. I'm like, no, dude, those are not real sex scenes. That's fake.
Oh, man.
Yeah, people are pretty creepy. People have a lot of misconceptions.
Well, that's where I'd like to set that record straight here for a second. I think the majority of your characters, for the most part, have been female characters that have a strong sense of their character. Yes, there may be sexy elements. Yes, there may be other elements. But overall, I think your portrayal of women in horror film is that of a strong character. Is that always a conscious decision when you go into a role? And what are your thoughts on how the average woman is portrayed in genre films?
Well, that's a good question, and I think I'm probably a little less typical than a lot of the scream queens that are out there. No offense to anybody, but we all kind of fill our different niches based on maybe our look or what kind of type we are as a woman. And I think I often get cast in these strong kinds of character roles because I think in real life I do have a pretty strong personality, and I grew up with two brothers, and I am a little bit of a tomboy maybe, and I do kind of get cast in these very strong female character roles. Like, I remember one of my earliest things I did, actually, I'm going to bring up is Zombie Hunters, City of the Dead. I was cast as a soldier, a member of the National Guard. And I remember talking to Reverend Patrick Devaney, who's the director of that, at a convention about getting a part in that. And he was like, you know what, I do have a part for you that's featured and has dialogue. It's a soldier. He's like, you know what, we're going to cast a guy. But he's like, I think you're a strong enough woman to pull it off. And, in the modern age now, there are a lot of female soldiers, so why not have a female soldier in the series, So there you go. I got cast in something that was originally intended for a man. And I think I am kind of like a strong kind of character. I'm feminine, certainly, but I do think I bring that kind of strength. And when I look at my fans, the people that follow me on Facebook, that follow me on Twitter, I think most of my male fans do like to see me in this strong role, where that, like, maybe I'm, running around killing people, or maybe I'm killing zombies, or maybe I'm like wearing like these really big leather boots, or I'm, covered in blood. A lot of guys like to see me as like an evil witch holding a skull or something like that, and find that kind of provocative, sexy, and kind of like a powerful kind of image. And I think that's probably the type that I play to a bit, and tends to fit me more than it does some of the other actresses out there. Maybe just based on my energy and my persona and stuff that I bring in. When I play a sorceress, when I play a gypsy, when I play a witch, when I play a Satanist, when I play a soldier. They're all like these strong characters with a very strong sense of self. And they're not always the one going around killing everybody, but they're definitely the ones that bring in a lot of strength into their role in the film. Oh, yeah.
Now, what are your thoughts on how women are portrayed for the most part in the genre these days?
I think it's evolving, and I think it varies, and I think that's a lot of that is up to the actress and how she feels comfortable. Because, you can only be exploited if you let yourself be exploited, or if you feel as though you're being exploited, really. And if you're a woman and you're completely comfortable playing a more passive role, and a nude role, or a role with a lot of sexuality, that's really up to you and your own comfort level and where you want your career to go, Same thing if you're a man. I think that's really up to you, really, because we're living in a time period where, I think the genders are becoming more equal. I'm seeing a big move with movies like I Spill Your Guts and some other ones where we're having more and more male nudity in movies, more and more. Full frontal and stuff. So I feel like the best we can ever hope for, and I told this to my friend Janice, I think the best that we can ever hope for is not that women will not be exploited, but that men will also be exploited equally. and I'm all for that, because I know I like to watch movies where men are naked. So I think we should have more movies where men are naked to even it out.
Right? If that's what makes you happy, I can't argue with that,
Well, I like that because I know I Spill Your Guts, we have some full frontal scenes, and one of my friends that's kind of a feminist, she was like, which one of your movies can I watch where I won't be that offended? And I said to my friend Janice, watch I Spill Your Guts because it has some nude scenes with men. And she was like, you know what? She's like, I felt a little bit better about it knowing that there were some naked dudes in it and some naked women, because she's like, at least that's kind of balanced. She's like, I can get behind that, as a feminist. At least it's balanced, right? And then if you watch
I respect that, actually. I respect that a lot.
Well, that's equality.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, it's sometimes, the genre gets a bad rap sometimes. We all push for wanting to see the boundaries, broken because we're tired of seeing the same old thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have a little bit of a different, we both have a different perspective working a lot more in the independent sector when it comes to the genre. So, yeah, our projects tend to be a little bit less cookie cutter. But when something does break the mold or when something does push the boundary, then all of a sudden everyone's offended and we need to scale it back. I know you said, sometimes some fans are a little averse to some of the roles that you play or, how you portray certain characters. Do you feel like there are really any taboos left in our genre that we can push that the PC police won't shut you down over?
I guess there still are some taboos that are out there, and hopefully I'll be able to encounter them and address them in my acting, I guess, at some point, because that'll be interesting. As long I'm definitely open to taking on different roles and doing some pretty crazy stuff in movies, as long as I see the artistic merit of it and I see it fitting in within the context of the story, and also within the frame of what my film career is and what I want it to be.
Right.
And I don't think it's what you play in a movie and what you act in in film should limit you. I've played some pretty controversial figures, and then I played some pretty wholesome characters too. And I live my life a certain way, and I engage in my acting in another way, and they don't necessarily parallel or correlate with each other whatsoever. And people have to understand that, and acting is acting. It's all about, embracing your art form. I'm sure there are some taboos out there, and I'm sure we can offend people in new and interesting ways, and the indie genre is kind of all about that. And art should be kind of about that. Like when you go somewhere and you see a painting, that painting should make you feel something. Even if you hate it, you should feel something. And the same thing is true of a film. Like, if you see a film, maybe it'll make you laugh, maybe it'll make you cry, maybe it'll make you angry. But it should make you feel something, because that's what it's all about, And we don't want to be going out there and making these movies that make nobody feel anything, because then what's the point? Ultimately. Then
now, one of the other questions I asked you during the Deadly Beauty series was, what Scream Queen inspired you the most? And you had listed Barbara Steele as the Scream Queen that inspired you. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Barbara Steele, and shame on you, I mean, if you've never seen Black Sunday from 1960, then...
Yeah, you have to see Black Sunday. I'm glad you brought that up. It would be my dream to do a Black Sunday where I would play her character or dual roles in that. That would be my dream role, to play dual roles like that in a film like that, as the lead playing two characters. So if anybody out there wants to remake that movie, please cast me. But I'm glad you brought up Black Sunday, because that's probably one of her best films. But like every film that Barbara Steele's in is a fantastic film. I would pay to watch that woman read the phone book. I don't care what she does. She's a phenomenal actress. She's still alive, and she's still working today. And I think she must be in her 80s or something like that, because she has talent and she has skill. She's worked with Fellini. She's worked with all these amazing directors and Vincent Price and all these other amazing actors, and really was on the top of her game, working in all these Italian horror films for Hammer and stuff. And I love Barbara Steele, and I was a little girl, and I remember watching like The Pit and the Pendulum. I think was the first film I ever saw her in, and she's not even in that much of the movie, but she's like, I think the third or fourth build, which is pretty good. And the whole film, you're really waiting for her to show up, because she has that kind of presence, that you're just waiting. Where's Barbara Steele? Where's Barbara Steele? Where's Barbara Steele? Oh my God, finally, there she is. Yay, because that's Barbara Steele. It doesn't even matter how big of a part she has in the movie. It's just that she's in the movie. It just kind of electrifies you as a horror fan, But
I agree,
everybody
100%.
has to check out Barbara Steele. And what I find about her and what I love about Barbara Steele is that she is this well-rounded actress. She can do suspense. She can do drama. She can do horror. She's the most well-known for horror. But she's done really everything, and she's worked even with Fellini. And she's still working now because she is an attractive woman, certainly, and she has a very unique look to her. But she also always has that talent. that acting skill set that very few people possess that is always going to make her an asset, really, forever. Her and Christopher Lee are still consistently working actors,
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes, I agree 100%.
They have talent,
Now, let me ask you this. Of course, she is a very well-rounded actress. But if we go back to the horror element for a minute, if we really look at it from a perspective of horror films, Barbara Steele, in her heyday, she was really the foundation of what would become Scream Queens. Can you kind of talk about what it was she did as an actress that laid that foundation to what Scream Queens are today?
It's a good question. Well, I'm going to say, and I know Fangoria has even said this in some of their issues where they've talked about Barbara Steele, that in that time period that she was in, she was really the only female actress that was on par or even close to being on par with like Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, and Christopher Lee. There's no other woman that you could put her name up there. Not even Ingrid Pick, she wasn't in enough movies, really. It has to be Barbara Steele. And that's a pretty amazing thing for a woman in that time period. And it's also just like amazing to think of like her on-screen presence and her longevity in film is actually really amazing to think about too, because her voice is dubbed in most of her horror films because they weren't in English, they were in Italian, and then they were dubbed in English here. So a lot of times we're not even listening to Barbara Steele's real voice in these movies. I don't know if people realize that, but a lot of times her voice is dubbed. Sometimes it is her voice, sometimes it's not her voice. It's kind of funny. And I'm very familiar with what her voice really sounds like, so when I watch them, I know. Not everybody else probably knows that. But it's amazing. And she didn't really want a mainstream kind of career. I think she was always about her art. But she definitely would be the actress that kind of ushered in the horror genre actress, the scream queen actress. Because look at her. She's this horror genre actress that's on par with Christopher Lee because she's definitely very skillful. She's a fantastic dramatic actress that brings it to the horror. She's in so many different movies, but she is the most well-known for her horror films. Just like Vincent Price, she just has that look. I know Fangoria once said, they had a quote, Barbara Steele is the only woman whose eyelashes snarl. And she just, which is a great quote. And it's just like, wow, she just had this look that just is so perfect for the horror genre. I think she even said in an article that she mostly was cast in these roles where she would kind of be a victim of her desires and her passions, and she would be punished for them. And the male audience seemed to really love watching Barbara Steele being punished for her passions and desires. That's kind of like the plot of like every film that she's in,
I guess there are worse things to be watching, right?
Exactly. There was there was a subtle sexuality, I think, to always and sexiness to a lot of her performances, especially a lot of her stuff early on, without a doubt, that she brought in there. So that's definitely that scream queen kind of element of the eroticism that was there. And I think a lot of her work, and I think that is always there with Barbara Steele, is that she's a very sexy and erotic person and kind of like attractive in kind of like a subtle and kind of like different kind of way, So, I think she would probably be one of the first Scream Queens, if not the first.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
We've only got a few minutes left, but there's a couple things I definitely still want to touch on. You had mentioned before Malevolent Magazine, and I just saw on your Facebook a little while ago that you're doing stuff with Diabolic Magazine as well. Kind of tell us about your association with those magazines and what you're doing with them.
Well, I'm going to say two things on that. One is I write a column every month for Malevolent Magazine called A Day in the Life of a Scream Queen, which is all about my exciting adventures in the horror genre. Always proving to the world that horror isn't just a genre, but it's actually a lifestyle, for the fans, for the directors, for the actors, the actresses, for all of us. Horror just kind of transcends just being a genre. And that's what that's all about. That's Malevolent Magazine, and you can check that out online. And I recently teamed up with Diabolique Magazine and also Diabolique Productions. Diabolique Magazine, I'm a sales executive. I'll be selling ads and involved in their promotional marketing team. I just started work with them. And right now I'm in Canada working with Diabolique Productions on Herschel Gordon-Lewis's most recent film, Blood Mania. which is an anthology.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So big things coming for 2015. It's an awesome pleasure to be working with someone like Herschel Gordon Lewis, someone that I've always looked up to as a true horror icon, the godfather of gore, to be working with producer James Sato, to be working with Diablo League Magazine, Diablo League Productions, and it's really exciting to be here in Canada right now, in fact. So I just want to tell everybody a little bit about that. So, yeah, I'm keeping myself pretty occupied.
Well, now, as far as film projects go, why don't you tell people what you got coming up, what you're going to be working on, what's recently finished, what should we be watching out for?
Well, that's a good question. So you definitely want to be looking for Blood Mania next year and things along those lines, that's for sure, because you don't want to miss out on anything from Herschel Gordon Lewis. That'd be a mistake. And then
Indeed.
I think for me, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Herschel. And then I want to also say, look for me in this coming year in Hunters, directed by Adam Albrand and also starring Linnea Quigley. Also look for The Sadist by Adam Albrand, also starring me and Linnea Quigley. There's going to be a whole bunch of films probably coming out, I think, in fact. Bible Belt Slasher Part 2 just got released. Look for that. What else got released? A Dark Place Inside, where I play the mother of a little boy that's being sexually abused and growing up to become a serial killer, by Mike O'Mahony, out of the Philadelphia area.
I know Mike.
Yeah, Mike was a great guy to work with. I had a small part in IBS, and then I came aboard for A Dark Place Inside. We got a review in Horror Hound magazine in June. That was a great review for Dark Place Inside. So you definitely want to check that out. It's a very artistically done, gory as hell horror film. So you want to check that out. And then probably there's a whole bunch of other things that are probably coming up in the not-so-distant future, too. Like you want to look for Bite School, where myself and Jasmine St. Clair will be in that. Jasmine and I have been in a few movies together. So that's going to be really fun. Sanctum Deep, which is directed by Geraldine Winters. It's a sci-fi thriller. I play a doctor in that. That'll probably be coming out in 2015 as well. And I also want to mention I was recently in a documentary by Johnny Daggers called Blood on the Reel, which tells a lot about the independent horror film scene, interviews actresses, directors, and everybody to tell you about all the turmoil and tribulations that we go through in order to bring horror movies to you in the indie scene. So check out Blood on the Reel. That'll be coming out this coming year as well. I think that's going to be a great documentary to really, if you like the inside scoop on things, you want to check that out. So I was very happy to be involved in that. Look for me in Tapestry, which is probably going to hopefully get a theatrical release in 2015. That's the Christian film starring Stephen Baldwin. And I was on the Peter Austin Noto show recently. You can check that out online. Peter Austin Noto has been involved in Saturday Night Live and a whole bunch of other great series and TV shows. So, yeah, Apocalypse Kiss, I know, is available on YouTube and on demand. So check out Apocalypse Kiss with me, Michael Berryman, D.C. Douglas. Check out on Vimeo the Interior of Web series. I'm sure you can Google me online and find so many things. I'm going to give everybody Blood Slaughter Massacre is a good one. Attack of the Brain People is another good one I'm in. Skid Row is getting some attention. That's kind of a detective story that I acted in with, what's his name, with Frank Vincent Stallone. And I'm going to give everybody my Twitter and my Facebook.
Please.
Genoveva Rossi. Excuse me? Genoveva Rossi 810. GENOVEVA ROSSI 810, and my Twitter is Genoveva Rossi 1. What were you saying, Michael?
I was going to say, please, I wanted you to give out all of that stuff. I definitely want people to know where they can follow you, how they can catch up on your work and everything that's going on.
Well, you can never go wrong with just Googling me, and then you can look at my IMDb, and I'm sure a lot of interviews and information and my acting reel on YouTube and everything is going to just pop right up. You can even watch some short films of mine on YouTube if you want to get a little bit of an idea, some trailers of things that I've been in. All that is very accessible. I'm definitely online to be found. I even noticed I was on Facebook today, and Facebook generated an interest page with my name. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I was like, wow. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I even show up on Answers.com now. I was like, what films has Genoveva Rossi been in? Yeah, you know you've made it when you're on Answers.com.
You know, since you brought him up real quick, I have to ask, because I know he listens now and again. How in the world did Mike O'Mahony talk you into being an IBS?
An IBS. You know what? I came out to be an IBS, and I have a small part in that in some of the bar scenes. And I had heard a lot of really great things about Mike O'Mahony, and I had read a little bit about him in Fangora, and a lot of people, including Anthony Curry, had said a lot of good things about him. But I decided to come out there and work with him and to meet him and do this small part out in Philly. And Mike was like, dude, he's like, I'm surprised you even came out with such a small part, Genoveva. And he's like, well, Mike, I'm like, I came out so I can meet you and you can give me a bigger part in your next film. He's like, yeah? And I'm like, yeah. And that's ended up exactly what happened. Because I had been watching Mike for a while. I think he's got a huge amount of potential, a lot of creativity, and he's a really innovative director and filmmaker. So it was really like a pleasure working with him, both on IBS and A Dark Place Inside.
Yeah, I was talking with Mike way back in the beginning days, and it's fun and it's nice to see how far he's come with everything that he's done. He's another guy, like you said as well. You know, he's someone that people should be watching out for.
And I was watching him, and that's why I came out for IBS, so I could actually meet him in the flesh and connect with him, because I knew I wanted to work with him, and I was very thankful that I got the part in A Dark Place Inside, which was another really great and dynamic role for me. It's a dramatic kind of role. It was great acting with, like, little Kieran Boyle, who plays my son in that, and Rob Dimension, who plays my husband. It was great working with Mike and seeing his whole creative process. You know, it's a great film. And I look forward to seeing his other films.
Did you say Rob Dimension was in that with you?
Yeah, he plays my husband in that. Mm-hmm.
No kidding. He's a good guy, too. I've had him on the show as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that was my first time working with him, and I think we're both actually in Adam Albrandt's The Sadist as well. So now I think Rob and I are in 2 movies together. Yay! So
sweet. Yeah, he's a good dude. I like him a lot. So, well, Genoveva, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You know, you're always welcome to come back on. If you ever have any news, you need something up on Horror Society, let me know. And I'll definitely send you the information for Deanna for the convention in November.
Absolutely. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much, Michael, for having me on. Thank you so much for writing about me for Horror Society. It's always a pleasure speaking with you and working with you. And thank you for supporting the independent horror scene.
Anytime, and we look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you so much. Take care now. Happy New Year, everybody.
Anytime. Once again, everybody, that was writer, director, and actress Genoveva Rossi. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to do the second half of our Digital Dismemberment Blu-ray Spotlight when we cover The Vault of Horror. But before that, we're going to have a double shot of Metal Blade music. We're going to open this up with King of Asgard. The name of the CD is Karg. The song is Total Destruction.
What?
Spontaneous Combustion from the band Pentagram Chile off of their CD, The Malefice. Before that, we opened it up with King of Asgard. The song was Total Destruction, and that's actually a bonus track off of the CD, Karg. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's that time for digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
And in the second half of our digital dismemberment spotlight for the evening, we are going to be covering Scream Factory's 2-disc collection set of Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. If you remember before our interview with Genoveva, we talked about Tales from the Crypt, but now it's time to talk about Vault of Horror. Available uncut for the first time on home video, 5 unsuspecting hotel guests step into an elevator, which leads them to an underground vault. Trapped with no way out, each guest shares a gruesome tale of an encounter with death. But as the stories unfold, the men begin to suspect that their presence in the vault is no coincidence, and that the only way out is death. Starring Tom Baker, famous, of course, for Doctor Who, Denholm Elliott, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Kurt Jurgens, The Mephisto Waltz, and Michael Craig from Mysterious Island, this ferociously entertaining film is a worthy sequel to Tales from the Crypt. And as one of the bonus features that are included on this, there is an alternate title sequence in the beginning of the beginning of the film you can watch. It has no audio, but it does list the film as Tales from the Crypt 2. It's also amusing to note that during one of the stories, the actual book is shown. Someone is reading the book, and it says it's a feature film. So that was kind of amusing as well. And basically, you get the same premise as you did with Tales from the Crypt. The only difference being is instead of being in a crypt and mausoleum, they're in an office building. But a lot of the stories in this one I really found these entertaining. In particular, I like the one about the man that went to go visit his sister because she was the beneficiary on the will, and he murders her. And the town winds up being a town full of vampires, and they string him up, and they tap him like a keg, and they drink his blood, with the hook being that his sister is one of them as well. I thought that was, pretty morbidly done, but a very entertaining story nonetheless. I also like the one at the end about the painter who goes and seeks out voodoo. Basically, his hand, anything he paints with his hand, if it's damaged, the subject of the painting is damaged. I thought that was a really unique way of telling the story, including how some of the characters were off, by gunshot, severing of limbs, eyes burned out, and ultimately the artist's death as well. Again, very well done, very enjoyable. Looks very sharp. 1973 for Vault of Horror, 72 for Tales from the Crypt, by the way. But again, very much that 70s style. You can see it in the dress, the hairstyle. Not the way that it's mimicked today, but the real deal. Very vibrant use of color and sound. Again, each of the stories was entertaining and unique in its own way. Each brought a nice anthology-style element. I wish films were still made in this style. This was very entertaining to sit back and watch. Now, on this one, of course, I mentioned you get the alternate beginning in the title sequence. You also get the trailer for the film. But one of the other unique elements for this film is that there is a second disc, and on that second disc, we get the 1.851 theatrical cut of the film, And then we also get the 1331 open matte uncut version of the film. And that theatrical one, that is the PG cut, and then the 1331 is the rare open matte version of the BFI Master. So as far as special feature goes, and getting additional supplemental material, you really can't beat, getting 3 versions of the film, including a rare uncut matte of it. So while there was, I'm not going to go so far as to say disappointment, but I mean, while I would have liked to have seen some interviews or behind the scenes, even some still galleries from Tales from the Crypt, getting 3 versions of Vault of Horror in these various formats is a very nice way to see the film and get a different idea. Again, the style, this is not imitation of 70s style. This is real 70s style filmmaking. I think a lot can be learned from looking at the lighting and the way that the films were shot. If you really want to, I would say this isn't quite grindhouse, but it's right in that wheelhouse. If you want to kind of start to get the feel for that, these are the films that you need to watch, and it's a great deal to get both of these films together, and it's nice to see them get a digital, a digital release, a high definition release. Scream Factory once again continue, they just absolutely continue to amaze me with the quality and the types of films that they're putting out. Overall, I would give Vault of Horror about the same rating I would give Tales from the Crypt. It's about a 3.5. I think the storytelling, again, is really nice. There is blood, and it's interesting with some of the murder sequences and what you see that the film actually gets a PG, the PG cut. And, there's a few small differences, but still it's very interesting back in the day how much more you still got away with than you do today, even for a PG film. As most of Scream Factory's films, if you reverse the cover, you would have a Vault of Horror cover. It's kind of a collage of pictures, and then there's also one for Tales from the Crypt. But the artwork that they use on the front split cover is a really nice presentation for the films. Again, as a collection as a whole, I mean, if you look at the actors, again, that are in this between both films, you're talking about Joan Collins, Peter Cushing, Patrick McGee, Sir Ralph Richardson, Tom Baker, Denholm Elliott, Kurt Jurgens, Michael Craig. I mean, you have a wealth of actors and talent that took place in a gritty style of horror that, in a lot of ways we miss today. So Scream Factory, again, should be commended for putting out such an absolutely fabulous double feature. This is, again, I think you can get away for the most part with watching both of these with a teen audience that you're trying to break into the genre without it getting overtly sexual or overtly graphic. So again, well done. As an overall, I would give the 2-disc set probably an 8 out of 10. Again, while I would have liked to have seen even a still gallery for Tales from the Crypt, you really can't argue with Scream Factory giving us 3 versions of Vault of Horror, much less the movie that preceded it, Tales from the Crypt, in a digital format. So both movies, 3.5 out of 5, and then the DVD an 8 out of 10. Another great release from Scream Factory. Make sure to head over onto shoutfactory.com or screamfactory.com to get your copy. Order it at your big box retailers or your favorite brick and mortar store, should they have it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it was another great episode. I want to say thank you to writer, director, and actress Genoveva Rossi for coming on, talking about all of her great work, like Jacko Slasher, Apocalypse Kiss, what it was like to be working or to go out and, visit the convention scene and then eventually become a part of the convention scene, playing strong female roles in the genre, how she views women's roles in the genre today. And some of the great talent that she's worked with, it's really worth it. It was really a great interview, and I think, she's leading the way for a lot of young actresses. I think a lot of people need to be watching Genoveva and the things that she's doing, and not just her genre stuff. She is trying to range out as an actor, so make sure to check out some of her other work, including like she said, Stephen Baldwin, Tapestry, that might get theatrical release this year. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. I want to say thank you to my friends Tom Chen and everyone out at Scream Factory for sending along this absolutely fantastic 2-disc edition of Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. Definitely run out and check this. I mean, this is for any completist, anyone, like I said, you want to see Joan Crawford do horror? Here you go. This is worth checking out. And it gets bloody, and that's, something you would never expect, but definitely head out and check that out. I want to say thank you to my friends out at Metal Blade Records for supplying all the fantastic metal music we got to listen to tonight. So on that note, we will see you in the new year. Make sure to tune in Thursday evening for Flesh Wound Radio, and make sure to keep an eye out. The new issue of Living Dead magazine should be hitting shelves in about mid-January. So when I get more details about that issue, I'll be putting out links and posting things on Horror Society about it. So until next week, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dead Man telling you to have a happy new year and to rest in